All right, so this is Zach Hoddle. It's February the 9th, and I'm here to do an oral history interview on integration and segregation. Go ahead.
Okay, all right. My name is Marquetta Mitchell. I always like to say Laura Marquetta Mitchell. And Zach is in our home today with my husband and me to talk about segregation and integration. Mm-hmm. So we welcome him in our home, and we're glad for the opportunity.
Thank you.
My name is Willy Mitchell. I was born August 3rd, 1948. Went to Sunset Hill Elementary School. Then shortly after graduation, went to Strasburg High School.
All right.
Oh, I guess I was supposed to say about what I was
That's
born
fine.
to. Okay. Oh, well, I actually was born in Greenville, Tennessee. And I always say that because my mother happened to be in Greenville at the time, and that was her hometown. And so I call Strasburg my home, though. Mm-hmm. And I attended Sunset Hill School until I graduated from the 7th grade, right? We went to the 8th grade. Graduated from the 7th grade. When I graduated from the 7th grade, that was when the segregated schools here, that was the last year of the segregated schools. Right. So I was in the first class that was actually officially went over to what we then called the white school, mm-hmm. which was high school for me, 8th grade.
Okay.
Although there were other black students there before I got there who had kind of matriculated into the system before it was really, I guess, official. Mm-hmm.
Right. And just to clarify, when did you finish at Sunset Hill?
It was years. I believe it was 1963.
Okay.
I was 64, wasn't I?
Must have been. So I was the first black male to go to Strasburg High School. Prior to that, Faye Mitchell, my sister, Gloria Harris, Priscilla, and Angela Osbury were the first from Strasburg to go to high school.
Yeah, that I found in the records that 1962 was the first year there were any African American students there, and then mm-hmm. a few more in '63, and then finally mm-hmm. in '64. So
yeah, I believe.
I wrote a history. Let me go upstairs and get it. I can put my hands on it if you want. I wrote a whole story about it.
About this
for children. Just
okay.
For children. Would you like to get a copy?
That would be great.
Yeah. It's right in that closet upstairs. Was it 64 that see, I graduated 69 in the 12th grade. So 68 in the 11th grade, 67th in the 10th grade, 66 in the 9th grade, 65 in the 8th grade.
All right.
Yeah, because the years. Just,
right. I understand.
My brain.
I understand.
But because I started school late because we lived out in the outer part of the country. We lived out in Lebanon Church area.
Okay.
My father worked on a farm. So, and my mom worked, she worked on the farm also. Mm-hmm. So they didn't have, there was no way, the buses, we weren't allowed to ride the bus in the Strasburg. Right. And so I ended up being moved to Strasburg to live with my grandparents, Turner and Letha Mitchell, down on what was then B Street.
Okay.
And so I stayed there with them and went to school until it seemed like it was and that was school, in Sunset Hill School.
Okay.
Then we moved to Strasburg, I think it was 1956. Moved into town, so to speak.
Now, I'm curious a little bit about Strasburg, I know in Woodstock there was a kind of a place, a geographic area where most of the African American community lived.
Mm-hmm.
But then in Mount Jackson and Newmarket, that wasn't the case. Was that the case in Strasburg? Was there?
Yeah, predominantly was B Street, or
Right.
now it's Branch Street, and then what is known now as Alsbury Street was we call the hill up on the hill.
Okay.
Which that's where Sunset Hill School is
Right.
today,
Right.
and it was a lot of black families up there in that
Okay.
area.
So that area, the hill there around the school and stuff, was
Right.
predominantly the.
And with us, we lived on A Street, which now is Ash Street. It was like three black families that lived, well, we lived right beside each other there.
Okay.
And that was about it. Wasn't too many,
Right.
most all the black were between Brad Street and what was D Street and Alsbury Street and all that.
Okay.
So
Now can you maybe talk a little bit about, like the restaurants and the theater and stuff, which I'm assuming were segregated in Strasburg. Could you maybe just talk a little bit in general about that? I mean, I guess some of your experiences with those.
well, there were several restaurants in Strasburg at that time, but of course they were all segregated. But the one that we went to most of the time was Virginia Restaurant,
Okay.
which Sager's Realty is there down the corner. But we had to go in the back
Mm-hmm.
and in the kitchen area, and that's where my mother worked as a cook.
All right.
And they had several booths back there, and that's where we ate and served. It wasn't until years later we were allowed to go out front. I mean,
Right.
I was washing the windows. I could wash the windows out front and stuff like that. But as far as sitting down and eating and everything,
Right.
we weren't allowed to go. But that's and another place was the Tasty Freeze. Well, that was after that's when integration started. We used to go to the Tasty Freeze and
Alright.
sit in there. But as a young person, I really didn't go to any other restaurants in town other than that. And as far as the theater, we could go to the theater, but you had to set up in the
Okay.
balcony.
balcony, which was great.
Right.
Oh
We
my
thought
goodness,
so.
yeah, we thought it was great because I mean, you sat here, the screen is right in front of you. It was nice. I mean, if that was punishment, well, whatever. But the thing was, you didn't have the option sitting somewhere else
anywhere else.
down in the lower auditorium.
All right.
But and then again, we couldn't afford to go to the theater that much. Most of the time, it was like at Christmas when First Bank used to have Santa Claus,
Okay.
and they would give you you could go in and sit on Santa, and the lines were long. You go in and sit on Santa's lap, tell him what you want. You get a bag of hard candy and an orange. and a ticket to go to the home theater,
Okay.
which was cool.
All right.
I can't find it.
Excuse me.
That's okay. I gotta get that stuff together for meaning we're beginning to have reunions now.
Okay. Yeah, I talked to Gloria Stickley. In fact, I was just there a little while ago.
Mhm.
I think she said something you were starting to have reunions
Yeah.
now at the school. Now, I'm curious a little bit if you could talk about. I know you said you were born in Greenville. How did you, I guess, end up moving from Greenville to
okay.
Strasburg?
Well, that's a kind of a long story short. My mother and father, actually my father lived at the time in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
My mother worked for my father's parents and cleaning their house and all that kind of stuff. And so there was my mother was from Greenville, Tennessee,
Okay.
and she had moved from Greenville, Tennessee to Washington, cleaning homes and doing what we call days work in Washington, D.C. Days work, and I did days work too. Days work was basically black folks working for white folks cleaning their houses.
Okay.
And so my mother really worked for my grandparents cleaning their house. And so I came along. And so my grandparents had property here. The Witherall name, I'm a Witherall. That's
Okay.
my maiden name. And so the Witheralls go way back. Way, way back. The family Bible's over here
Okay.
in Shenandoah County. Witheralls are spelled 3 different names.
3 different ways.
3 different ways, yeah. 3 different ways, the same name. But anyway, we were working on that. So my grandparents, because my parents had issues, my grandparents took all of us and brought us here to Strasburg because they had property in Strasburg
Okay.
that was on B Street, which is Branch Street now. They used to rent it out to people. It was like a rental property. And so they came here and brought us here
All right.
and raised us here in Strasburg. That's how Strasburg became my home.
Okay.
Yeah. And Willy, well, you didn't ask Willy, so, but Willy is from, where were you born? Winchester Hospital, but you lived in the county, and he moved to Strasburg in order to go to school. Yeah. So that's how I got here.
Okay.
But the Witherall name was already here.
Okay.
And we found out during Marquetta, more so than me, with research and everything and talking to the Allsbury's family, that one of the main reasons that they moved here from the Rappahannock County was so the children could get an education.
Okay.
Right.
And because in that particular area, I think they might have to gone to Manassas.
Miles and miles and
Yeah.
miles. See, my dad, that's right, and my dad went to school, and some of his brothers had to leave here to go to Charlottesville and Manassas
Yes.
to go to school. That was that generation.
Right.
But now, my grandparents were retired teachers
Okay.
of a colored school when they moved here.
All right.
So, so that's how we had to do good in school. We did, and so they taught. My grandfather was one of the school teachers before the Sunset Hill School. That was the school over on Queen Street.
Pigtail Alley.
Pigtail Alley. And then, see, my auntie was, I don't know if can't remember if auntie taught on Sunset Hill School, but she certainly was one of the teachers at Woodstock.
Okay.
Yeah.
Creekside.
That's right. And now I can't confirm Creekside. Can't confirm that.
Okay.
Because I don't know. I just remember it was Woodstock School.
Okay.
And I think she did do some subbing and some small teaching in Sunset Hill School. But Poppy, my grandfather, was the one that taught here. And I know my grandmother also subbed here, taught here at Sunset Hill School because they were already retired teachers.
Okay. Now, if maybe get you to start first, and then maybe get you to talk a little bit about what Sunset Hill School was like. You know, I know it was like the one-room school and stuff, but I guess just kind of give a description of what your classes were like, and you know whether you liked your teacher, and just kind of the general overview, if you would.
Start
Go
with
ahead. Yeah.
It was, of course, one-room school, cold stove. It was very, I won't say always warm in terms of temperature, but physical temperature. But it was a class divided up in rows in rows by class. And what I remember was Mrs. Payne. Mrs. Payne was my teacher.
Dora H. Payne.
Dora H. Payne and her sister, Mrs. McLean, taught in Woodstock.
Yes.
And I remember so well because the teachers lived at different houses, and our house was the main house. Okay? So I remember very well. And we hated it. Because you had to be good at school, and then, gosh, Mrs. Payne followed you home. You know, it's just, I remember. Well, that's a funny story. I'll tell you that later. But so the classroom, I liked school.
Okay.
I liked school. I mean, I didn't know how to compare it to any other school.
Mm-hmm.
I liked school. I enjoyed school. I excelled at school. So the kids that excelled or did well, they taught other kids.
Okay.
I really liked that. I liked teaching other kids. And I wasn't the only one.
Right.
So all the kids who got to do very well sort of like became teachers' aides and helped to teach the other classes, which I thought was, I liked it.
Right.
And then if you're really good, it was a real big deal for Mrs. Payne, the teacher, to take you home on the weekends or to her home in West Virginia.
Okay.
So that was like a real big deal. So everybody wanted to go home with Mrs. Payne. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that was like a big deal. So I liked that. I liked the discipline of learning. I really did. I felt that the teachers were, for me, really good. For some kids who got in trouble, it might not have been, but I was one of those kids who was a pretty decent student, and I did fine.
All right.
And so I enjoyed school. School was fun. We had recess outside.
Mm-hmm.
We sang. We started every morning with prayer, pledge of allegiance to the flag. We sang songs. We sang songs where you moved. We had plays. We had talent shows. My brother and I, we had dance talent shows, speaking talent shows, and I liked it. There wasn't anything that I didn't like about school. Really, I didn't like it, but the part that I didn't like, I was like a year ahead of kids my age because my grandmother did that,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't like it because it left me very isolated.
Right.
I didn't have a clique or a group of friends. I knew they liked me and liked them, but I was never a part of a, girlfriend group and all that kind of stuff. And that's the part I didn't like. I liked going home for lunch. I liked, sometimes we went home for lunch. His brother, Ray, after school, everybody would want to jump on his bike. He must have had, sometimes it seemed like 6 kids on his bike. That's over exaggeration. But he'd be standing up. Someone would be on the seat. Someone would be on the fender. And someone would be on the handlebars. Okay? And we'd come down off that hill, pop the tracks, and come on home. Now, my grandmother never knew about that. There was a bully in school. What's his name?
Raymond.
Raymond.
Yeah.
He used to chase us home every day. Not every day, but often enough for my grandmother to come out of the house with a broom and chase him down the street. I enjoyed school. And I looked forward to going to Frederick Douglass School because the kids who were older than me, they caught the bus right down the street at Miss Rincey's house.
On Branch Street.
On Branch Street. And I used to watch the teenage girls with their pretty skirts and their Oxford shoes with their transistor radios. And sometimes they'd be dancing all the new dances before they got on the bus. And I couldn't wait to be a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Miss Payne always would say, I'm going to get you ready to go to the white school. You have to get ready to go to the white school. and you're going to learn this because I don't want to be embarrassed when you go to the weight school. And I remember that. I remember that was her thing, and my grandmother was there too, but I wasn't looking forward to going to the white school. I was looking forward to going to Frederick Douglass where all of the other black kids went.
Right.
But I enjoyed school. I liked being a student. I was happy in school.
Good.
Mm-hmm. And I felt even when I look back today, I think we got a better education than most kids today.
Okay.
I can tell you that. And we got extra when we got home because I live with teachers. we had to go upstairs. I mean, everybody got extra dose of education. My grandfather was an invalid who was a teacher also. His thing was history. So after we came home from school, we ate dinner and everything. Poppy had to go over our lessons, what we learned in school, and he would always teach us something different. Extra, go with multiplication tables, addition tables, subtraction tables, all of that stuff. And so, when I think about, kids today with education, it's just real different. But I got a good education. It may have been in a secondary school.
Mm-hmm.
It may have been, and they were with books that were thrown in the trash can at the other schools. They were, we knew that.
Mm-hmm.
It may have been with tiny pieces of chalk, but the discipline was there, and the discipline was there, and the hunger for good education was there. There wasn't a parent that I knew that didn't want that for any of their kids. Would you agree with that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Very serious about education.
All right.
She was.
But most parents were.
Yes.
Most parents were. Now, there were some kids that didn't go astray. You got the strap on your hand. You had to hold up the strap.
No, but a strap. It was a ruler.
Yeah, but that one, Miss Payne used a strap too.
But that wasn't on your hand. That was on your back.
No, Miss Payne used a strap on my sister.
She used it on my buttocks.
Okay, well, she used a strap on my sister's hands.
Yes.
I never will forget that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so that's my experience.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Man, you went through a lot when you were. No, let's see. I don't know. Basically, when I started school, I always felt why am I here? Because I got an education, but I don't think I got what I should have. I think my father was, in a way, was a better teacher on some things like math. My father only had a 6th grade education.
Okay.
But if you would say, Dad, what is 6 times 9 plus 4 plus 3? He'd have it for you. I mean, right there.
Mm-hmm.
Little like that. And I look at the math that we did, and look at the math that these children are doing now, and oh my gosh, we had it really easy. But even the math that we had was not as simple as the math that my father had. I mean, he said, why did they do this? Everything was just simplified to just still get the right answer, but it's all on how you got it.
Mm-hmm.
But my experience in school, it really wasn't that bad. Let's see. They did away with the coal stove, got an oil stove. Oil tank was in the back and in one of the ends, and it was an old oil stove.
All right.
When I was in the 11th grade, not 11th grade, sorry. When I was in the 7th grade, I got the job as being custodian.
Okay.
So I had to be there early in the morning, make sure the fire was going. Oh, that was a lot of responsibility.
I know it was.
Mm-hmm.
I made sure the fire was going, the door was open, and the lights were on. I got paid by the county. It was $12 a month. And and then sometimes in the evening we had this oil that would come in this, I guess, 5-gallon cans.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to mop it on the floor to keep it called like dust down type.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to have to do that. Sometimes I get some of the guys to help me do that. Make sure that the chalkboard was all cleaned, and but I think about the rainy days we couldn't go out. They had like shuffleboard
Okay.
and horseshoes and things like that. And at times, like at Christmas, I believe, the kids from, I don't remember if it was from the high school or from the middle school, they would come over and they would bring us textbooks and that they didn't, when they were finished with it.
Right.
And we still have some.
Mhm.
We still have some today with their names in them.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we
Because some of those books were tossed and just like the guy found the Morrison's things. Well,
Right.
we went, oh, wait a minute. I found one book with Marquetta's name in it. And my brother, I'm going, oh my gosh, look at this. So, we just kept it. And, but, yeah, he had the bully, one bully, and I beat the bully. Yeah, I stopped that. Yeah.
Right.
But he came.
Sure you weren't
became
kidding.
he became one of my best friends later on. But it was a lot of. That's the first place I've ever met a Puerto Rican.
Oh,
Because
yeah, I
a
forgot
family
about
moved
that.
in. We don't know where they moved from, but they moved into our community,
Mhm.
and of course they had to go to our school also. So that was very cool. And I think that's what even today I like to meet people from different
Right.
walks of life, different cultures and stuff. It's really interesting. But when graduation night came, I was the only one to graduate.
Mm.
It was but one person to graduate in that class.
Oh,
It was only, and I see, because I started late,
Mm-hmm.
and then of course I might have been put back a little bit. I can't remember all the details, but all I know is I was the only one that received a diploma at that time, and I remember my father meetings downtown, the school boards. I just remember vaguely sketches of that, getting things ready and going through a lot of arguments and things and discussions
Right.
about us as children
integration.
integrating the school.
Mongolizing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was and then what their kids are mongolizing.
Yes, that was my father.
Their girls
my,
mongolizing.
my father-
Boys.
my father was told that, said, Wilbert's your son and my daughter, they're young and, they might Mongolize. And of course, my father said, well, my son's not a dog or an animal, and neither is your daughter. And he said, they'll be just fine. My dad was very calm and type person. My mother was a little fiery, but my dad was very a calm type guy. Was in the essence of, we can talk about this,
Mm-hmm.
but his mind was set that we were going to Strawberry High School,
Okay.
and but Sunset Hill was it was good, but I I look at education now. Some of the things, the tutors.
Mhm.
I believe if I would have had access to something like that, it would have been much. I would have made that much better. But I haven't done bad. I mean,
No, you haven't. But you know, our parents did not want us to go to Frederick Douglass
Okay.
at all.
no.
At all. And like, his parents were involved in that movement. My grandparents were involved in the movement for integration. I don't know. I mean, there may have been. I just don't remember. I was just a kid. I don't remember any parent wanting their kid to get on that bus to Frederick Douglass. Now, I did because of all the teenage girls and whatnot.
Right.
But sometimes you want to have that bus made it to
Right.
Winchester, because sometimes you have to tie the door closed with a rope.
I've heard some.
Yeah.
In fact, I even talked to. It wasn't the bus that went to Frederick Douglass, but I talked to a guy that drove the bus
Mm-hmm.
to Lucy Sims in Harrison.
Oh, yes.
And
Uh-huh.
he had some pretty vivid descriptions of the
Right.
bus. And,
Now, my grandmother taught at Lucy Sims.
okay.
Yes. And she was in Rockingham County before she came
Okay.
here. And no, our parents generally, I mean, there was a move.
Right.
There was an initiative by the black folks in this town that their kids not be segregated.
Okay.
And they go to the so-called white school at that time.
Now, what do y'all think was the big push beyond that for that movement? Because, and that I think is unique because both the people from the south end of the county of Woodstock have told me that there was no. They don't remember there being a movement to get. They have told me that they were central because their parents. It was more of a more personal.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I believe the same thing.
The same
Right.
thing.
It wasn't like Warren County.
It wasn't.
Okay.
Oh my God, Warren County is.
Well, but anyway,
Yeah,
it
that
wasn't
was
like Warren County.
that was
Right.
not Shenandoah
Okay.
County.
Yeah.
So I would agree with the lower end of Shenandoah County. It was more of parents getting together as parents, taking a personal responsibility to verbalize
Okay.
that their kids are going.
But it took courage also.
But it, yes,
you know,
it
you
took
think about
courage.
that thing.
Yes, it did.
With all of what turmoil that's going around in the United States at that time,
Civil rights movements
and all that stuff, and for because a lot of the parents here, just like my dad and mom, we talking 5th and 6th grade education and work the rest of your life, all your life, but they did have a lot of common sense.
Oh yeah.
And just kind of pulling everything together and executing it, doing it. But the thing also I was thinking about Sunset Hill is when you had the PTA meetings, parents were there,
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
and the teachers and the parents had a communication thing. My parents would go to the school and sit down, or Miss Payne would come to the house, or Miss Truesdale.
Miss Brimage. You didn't have Miss Brimage.
No, they would come to the house and sit down, and or take them out to dinner or something. It was a respect there, but also it was almost like family, and we watched out more for each other. In the community type thing.
Mm-hmm.
We did. Our parents did.
I think what really helped with that is that all the teachers from the different sections of Shenandoah County, we imported our own teachers,
Okay.
you see. And so all the teachers lived with the parents and the students in their community. So they got to be a part of the community. And like I said, most of the time it was my house for Miss Payne. But Miss Truesdale, I don't know where she stayed.
She stayed over Miss
Cunhilda's house?
yeah,
Cunhilda's house. Miss Brimage
Hilda
stayed.
Morgan house.
That's right. I can't remember where Miss Brimage stayed. So,
I think they both were at the same area, same
okay.
place.
So, but it was all in the same community. If they stayed for the weekend, Most of the time they didn't. They went home, except for the ones that Miss Truesdale and Miss Burridge were from North Carolina and South Carolina. So if they stayed for the weekend and whatnot, they would go to our church.
Okay.
So they were in our churches, they were in our schools, they lived in our communities. In the community, you have to remember, a very small black community. Everybody knew everybody. So they became a part of the family. They were like family, and they were treated very well, like family. Now in our house, we had to give up a whole room, and there were 5 kids in our house. Some of us had to sleep downstairs. But a room was given up in our house for that teacher.
Okay.
And so the teachers at that time were very lofty in terms of their position in those communities. So the definition of a teacher is different than a definition of a teacher today.
Respect.
There was so much respect and so much reverence. I mean, they weren't God, but they were up there. Okay. So that made a real big difference. And so everybody was involved in making sure these kids were ready for the white school.
Okay.
And I mean, it really was a drive without saying it was a drive. It was a move without defining it as a move. It just happened because all the minds melded together.
But there were meetings. With,
Yes.
with the Board of Education.
Yes.
And with some of the town leaders and things of that nature also. I mean, those things that happen.
And sometimes they pretty fiery.
Yeah, but it wasn't to the point where, you know, we burning crosses in the yard and
Right.
killing cattle and stuff like that.
That's right. One of the reasons why it didn't happen, I don't know all the reasons, because I know the first day of school was very scary.
Mm-hmm.
The schools were segregated, but we went on a black bus.
Right.
And I remember teachers standing up saying, "We don't want to teach you." I remember that. I never will forget that. I never will forget that. And so I was scared. I talked to my colleagues who were high school people with the high school. They forget that I didn't start it. Most of them who are white, they forget I wasn't in elementary school with them. And, but I was afraid most of the time in high school. But that didn't all have to do with racism. A lot of it did, but the other part of it, I was just tiny little. When I graduated, I did weigh 95, and I was just extremely shy. And then with everything that was going on around Front Royal and all the civil rights stuff, it's just scary because I didn't know these white kids. But some of the white kids were just as scary as I was, but they didn't know the black kids. And you know,
yes.
I was scared. I could tell you. People thought I was shy. That's true. But I appeared more shy because I didn't open my mouth because I was scared. You didn't know what might pop off, you know, with what you were seeing on TV and everything. And Daddy was scared for us. So and I never really thought about that until Willie just said, it took a lot of courage for our parents to push us to go to that school because nobody knew what was going to happen. And I never thought about that before, but I know Daddy was scared. Right? I remember seeing the look on his face. I knew he was, but I knew I was supposed to go. So.
Well, I don't know about Mom and Dad. I remember the first, the first time that they took me, meaning Mom and Dad, took me to Strasburg High School. It was before school opened, and we met Mr. Stanley Delliner.
Oh yeah.
And he gave us a tour of the school, and I was in awe. I was going, "Oh man, this thing's so big, you know." And look at Jim. Wow. I told Dad, I said, "Dad, this is the biggest gym I've ever seen." He said, "Where have you ever seen a gym before?" I still remember that. But the only thing, my only thing was after I started school and all, started Strasburg High School, it was a lot of time by itself, especially in the 8th grade. It was just like, people didn't really talk that much to you. And the teachers seemed like they were a little offish. Some of them were. So I just kind of muddled through. And one day I was, I guess it was the ninth grade, I was putting something in my locker, and Larry Bright came up to me and said, "Hey man, you play football?" I said, "Oh, no, I never played football before." He said, "Why don't you come out and try it? What the heck?" I said, "Sure, okay." So then I ended up.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. So I call him Doc Bright today. But then athletes, that's a different,
Right.
a whole different thing there too. You earn their respect, and of course it was really good for me because that way I could put a whole lot of negative energy into the football thing. Then later on got into track. Then I was on the first wrestling team. One of that, I don't see anything.
He was a big star.
No, I wasn't a star.
Really
I was just an athlete.
Yes, he's so modest.
Well, but to me, it was just like you could really get rid of a lot of stress and a lot of stuff,
Right.
by just channeling it differently. So, and that's what I did. I just channeled all into next play. Okay, we're gonna play such and such, things of that nature,
Right.
and that helps keep down a whole lot of anger and stuff like that. But because looking back now, your hormones run wild when you're 14, 15, 16. My God. I don't say the parents put up with it. But you know what I'm saying. But so it was very good. Sports was good, and just I've always said, I said there were 3 men in my life that made me the man that I am today. There was Jesus Christ, Wilbert Mitchell, and Glenn Proctor, in that order. I'll tell you.
And do you think being on the sports team help you be accepted by the student population better?
Yeah. Just like with my dear little wife there, she wasn't on the debating team, and I didn't
have a sports bone in my body.
But everyone doesn't do sports. But
Right.
I could do debating, but probably could have been valedictorian and all that stuff. She was on it. But what she did was challenge all hers to education.
Right.
Me, I wish I would have studied more education. But it all worked out.
It all worked out.
But yes. But the thing that gets me today, it's just like 2 months ago, I had a young man come up to me. He was in his 40s now, I guess. Maybe a little older, but and because you never know what impression you put on. People, you never know how people are going to read you. And he came up to me and said, "Well, I want to tell you something." I said, "What's?" I said, "Okay, here we go." I said, "What's that?" He said, "You were always my hero."
Oh, yeah.
I said, "Your hero?" I said, "How was he your hero?" He said, "I like the way you always carried yourself. You never got angry and mad. You never did things that would cause embarrassment to your family or to our school." He said, excuse me, he said, "That's the way I want to be. I want to be just like that. So I use you, the way you carried yourself, that's the way I carry myself." So I went, wow. And that's when, I guess I was in 11th or 12th grade. So, when you hear a full-grown man tell you that, and he's the second one that told me things like that, and I'm going, wow. I just try to treat people like I want to be treated.
Right.
With respect.
Now, I'm curious for both of you, when you went to, the all-white or the predominantly white schools, how did the students react? Were there any issues there? And then I guess, how did the teachers and administrators act? And you talked a little bit about that. But I've heard quite a variety of stories on both those types of populations, and I wanted to get what you.
I think she had a different. Her class had a different. Well, it's like Marquetta said. It was all the about 30 or 40 children or something. Just let's do that for a number, just for that sake. Just went to the middle school and the high school then.
Yeah, my brother had a real hard time in the middle school. Did he go to middle school? He went to middle school. He had a hard time.
And I hear that, but when I went to high school, I didn't.
Okay.
Only thing, it's like I said earlier, the only thing that I ran into was people wouldn't talk to you, which to me, I was always somewhat of a loner as far as, just like I always hunted and fished and stuff.
Right.
I was always off to myself anyway. But all that changed as, just like I had a young kid come up to me and said, "I want to ask you something." I said, "Yeah, what?" He said, "Do y'all carry knives?" I said, "No." I said, "No, I don't have a knife." "Do you?" He said, "No." He said, "But my mom and daddy said that all you people carry knives." I said, "No." I said, "Not all of us carry knives." But it was, with me, it was a feeling out of each other, just like, okay, this kid's different. But by me, I think the ninth grade is by me hunting and fishing and doing sports and stuff like that. That fit right in with
what everybody else did.
Yeah. I still do. Oh, except the hunting part, I don't do that. Just fishing. But as far as fights and stuff like that, I've never been in a fight in school.
Right.
Cursing and hollering and all that stuff, other than encouraging somebody on in football camp or something like that, I never had to go through that. I think back on that, and I hear like Marquetta's brother Robert talk about, "Oh man, I was this and this," and they used to have a lot of fights over and things of that nature, kid on kid, one-on-one type thing. But I never was involved in anything like that.
Yeah, well, you knew. Yeah, I know my brother was in fights. I was not a fighter. I was always quiet. Always
Negotiator.
quiet. Well, I didn't really negotiate either. I just watched. And but my brothers had a very hard time. Very, very difficult time. I could sense things. I had a very acute sense of things, and I knew who didn't want to deal with me, and I really didn't care.
Right.
Let me take that back. I did, but I knew because in elementary school. Now it's really good hearing you talk. Because in elementary school, I really wasn't with a group. So I wasn't missing a group. So, you know how some girls or boys, they have a clique. I was never in a clique. So I didn't miss a clique, and I didn't have a need. I wished I was. I wished I had a best friend and all that. And I really wanted that. But I was used to not having it. And with the circumstances I was in, I never looked for it.
Okay.
So it was very lonely. Very, very lonely.
Yes.
I couldn't play sports. I tried to play sports. I tried to play basketball. I love volleyball. I tried that. Because it worked for Willy, it worked for Edgar. Edgar was in my class, but he was another sports star. I mean, everybody loved him. Everybody loved Edgar. Everybody loved Russell. Everybody loved Willy. The boys, they had the sports, but I didn't have anything. So I felt extremely alone. There were some girls who spoke to me. Pat Sapper. That was my girl. Yeah, she really, really liked me, and I really like her. People, I just don't think people knew what to do with me. You know, I wouldn't say that there was anybody really nasty to me because I was too shy to be nasty. I really was. I was sort of like invisible.
Right.
So, but I developed a relationship with a teacher, Mr. Proctor. See, Mr. Proctor came from West Virginia.
Okay.
And his whole thing about integration segregation was way different from the way Virginia treated it. So I don't know why, to this day, he is one of my best friends. But he would come to me almost every day. I guess he felt sorry for me. Because I was just a tiny little thing. It looked like I had rickets. I was so skinny. It really did. I must have looked so sick. And so I was one of those invisible, quiet, kind of smart kind of kids. And he would come. And I was so shy. My name was, I was called Marquetta Witherall. So people would say, well, some people would come up and say, well, what's your name? Marquetta Witherall. They say, huh? Laura? I couldn't even say my own full name. I was too shy to say my full name. Mm-hmm. And he would always check on me every day. And he is the one that made me feel like you're going to be okay. That was Glenn Proctor. He always checked on me. And when I graduated and went to college and would come back home, I always sought out Glenn Proctor. Oh yeah. I know something about that man. He was just a good man. And he understood black students. I'm going to say it like it is. He understood it because he couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. So I guess that's how he saw me. To this day, he hadn't told me. I need to ask him that when I see him. When he comes to the office, I said, how come you took an interest in me? But he did. And so he always would check on me. Now, and the principal made me feel safe. Mm-hmm. He made me feel safe. Mr. Dellinger was our first principal.
He's awesome.
And the reason why stuff didn't pop off at Strasburg High School is because he threw the media out.
He wouldn't allow them in.
They weren't allowed in.
He
did not allow them to come in and interview us because that's what the media wanted to do.
Right.
He said no. And he kept the lid on.
Right.
And so when we had our first reunion at the Strasburg Museum, we asked him to come and speak with Glenn Proctor. He spoke, the superintendent of schools and all that, to recognize for the first time in this county that they did exist,
right.
And you need to honor them. And honor all the graduates, the wonderful people that taught, and the wonderful students that came out of that school. And he spoke about that.
Okay.
He spoke about that. So that was my experience. My personality was too shy to even start any trouble. But I knew that there was a little trouble in River City with the Cooper boys, my cousins. You don't remember that?
I was gone.
You were gone. Okay, that was a little bit later. The Cooper boys, well, they were my cousins, and they were a little wild, but they didn't take any stuff. And so whatever stuff happened, and I know their stuff happened, it was up in the mountains and in the hills, and the police wouldn't touch it. That's all I'm going to say.
Right.
The thing that I really think about Mr. Proctor is when we were supposed to play John Mosby. Okay.
Right.
And Mr. Proctor got a call from the coach, and Mosby said, we will not play you with the black players on the team. So he said, oh, well, we'll just not play you at all. And that's where Mr. Proctor almost lost his job. Because him and Stanley Dellinger had it out then because Stanley said, Glenn, we have a contract. He said, we won't play them next year. He said, I got 2 young men here who are my key two of my key players. And then you're going to not let them go because of these people? Oh, it just went on. So it ended up, we didn't go. But he had to go, and he lost too. But I don't know if it would have made any difference if we were there.
You mean the 2 black players couldn't go?
Yes.
They could not
play.
Yeah,
Leonard Osbury and myself, we could
Right.
not go. No, we weren't allowed on the field, which was kind of sad. It was kind of sad. But that side of the that county it was a whole lot. It had a different mentality. Well, I mean, because we played Turner, Ashby, Montevideo, Elkton, Stonewall Central.
Warren County was real different.
It was.
And I get that sense, especially. I even get a sense of especially I get a sense with the different in the newspapers in the county. So the Northern Virginia Daily, because they cover Warren County and stuff, I get the sense they're completely different than the way that both the other 2 papers in the county at the time covered things.
That's the first and last time I've ever been spit on in my life was when we played Warren County, Bing Crosby Stadium. It was, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe this. This is sad. It's really sad. And it's hate is what it amounts to. And it's really sad.
Excuse me.
But I looked at it then, and I look at it now as you have an option. You could go out there and fight and bust your knuckles and use all that stuff, or just play duck, let it roll off your back, and go on to just play the game. Keep yourself straight and play the game. Follow the rules to play the game.
Now, I'm curious a little bit about kind of the difference in how people, I don't really want to say a different classes treated you, but different backgrounds treated. And the reason I say that is one of the things I've gotten is this common theme of the more educated people that lived in town treated African Americans differently than the people who lived like out in the country and stuff. And you mentioned that about something happened in the hills and stuff. And I don't know if did you all have that experience? Something similar to that, or was it kind of more of a generic way people treated you? I mean, does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying. I think I understand what you're saying. But with me, it was no different. I can't see any difference. I mean, because like the guys that live out in Coal Mine, and Star Tannery, and Lebanon Church, well, we all like squirrel hunted and target practice and groundhog hunted and play football.
Right.
And so it was like we had so much stuff in common.
All right.
It goes back with me. It goes back to a respect thing. I don't know. But then again, I looked at the guys that were like straight A students and stuff like that, where I was on the track team or in class with. They would, let's say on the track team, for example, Willy, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to work on your start. You need to get in your blocks this way. It was positive.
Right.
And in my mind, I can't think of negative stuff.
Okay.
No matter A student or straight D student. I mean, that was with me. I don't know.
I've never really thought about it that way. In school, in high school now.
And see, you had your valedictorian.
Because that was Marcy. It's funny, Marcy and I had this conversation some time ago. She was Marcy, who was white, the valedictorian. I had a conversation with her, 5-6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to say to her, Marcy, did you ever, her last name started with a W also. And I said, Marcy, did you ever notice that when you look at our class pictures, I was always somewhere around you, not just because your last name was a W, mine was a W. I said, because you were supposed to be the smartest, so I always was watching you. Because I wanted to beat you at everything you did, and I told her that.
Mm-hmm.
She said, I didn't know that. Not so much to beat her, but I knew I had to work 3 times as hard as she did to get the grades, and I knew that. And I considered myself a good student, and I wanted to be a great student. And I wanted to show him. It's really where I was. And I explained that to her. It wasn't about her personally.
Right.
It was what I wanted to do. And how lonely it was doing that. And she cried. We had lunch together. We were in the same industry. And I said, what's the matter, Marcia? She says, Marquetta. She said, I was just as lonely as you were. She said, I was a teenage kid without friends at all. And she was.
That's
so
true.
she was the smartest girl in school.
Right.
And a lot of people were jealous of her. Didn't want to be around her.
Mm-hmm.
And I understood her.
Mm-hmm. For
the first time I understood her. And so we had a good cry. We went on the lunch and I said, forget this. We don't want to do this anymore. But I understood that. So for me, I never thought about it like that at all in high school. I only have an adult perspective on it, not a high school perspective. And my adult perspective, when I look back over my adult years, I would say if I were to look at it like that, in terms of grades of people, like you say, or something like that, I would say there's no difference. Racism is racism.
Mm-hmm.
If you have an education, you think you hide it better behind fancy words.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have the fancy words and haven't learned them, it's pretty raw and up front in your face, which is what I appreciate better. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Where the education would teach you how to practice racism like this. At the same time, we're doing like this. Where we don't is like, I don't like you in. Okay. It's the same thing.
Right.
So that's my adult perspective.
Okay.
My high school perspective, I don't know that I really thought about it. I was just trying to survive.
But you see, I see what you were doing. See, where I was using sports, you were using education.
Education.
And see, you can see like, Marcy's right here. It's like, okay, and she's good at this. Well, I can do this too.
I know.
You know, it's like channeling, or it's not really channeling, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. It really was, and as I think of it now, I felt, I can do exactly what she's doing. For a while there, I thought I couldn't, but I watched her and Joel Pollard, and he's a sweetie pie. But Marcy, I didn't get. She was just like the smartest kid, and because there was that female thing going on.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So then I realized I can do what you said, but I have to study real hard. And I would never go to school without having anything unanswered.
Mm.
If I'd stayed up, my grandmother would have to make me go to bed. And sometimes I wouldn't get the last answer, but I'd get up early in the morning because I would never go to school without having all my answers done. Yeah. And I kind of still am that way.
Yes.
But so that was me.
Sorry.
And I didn't have a lot of sports. Couldn't participate in a whole lot of after school activities. There were 5 of us, and I had to help my grandparents take care of my brothers and sisters and my dad and do. That's all. I wasn't involved in a whole lot of social stuff, and I was always kind of envious, not jealous, but envious that other kids like Willy and Edgar and could do that, and I didn't. I didn't have a social life. That's true.
I would say going to the Tasty Freeze and eating 15 and quarter hamburgers and drinking a milkshake.
Well, I was at Tasty Freeze sometimes, but we were never allowed. I could go to the Tasty Freeze with permission and whatnot, but we were never allowed to, go with a group of kids anywhere like that. We were pretty protected in our family. Our grandparents didn't let us, you just couldn't get in a car and go someplace that nobody knew where you were. First of all, we didn't have a car to get in. So we just weren't allowed to roam like that.
Not like we were.
No, that's right. You all roamed. We were kind of protected. Yeah.
Now, I'm curious a little bit, too. You mentioned about the principal not letting the media in.
That's right.
And I'm curious what, from your perspective, what was the media trying to accomplish? Because I've read the newspaper accounts of integration of things, and they didn't do very much coverage of any of Shenandoah County's. I mean, there were articles, but short articles on page 2.
Right.
So what were they trying to accomplish? I guess with that, you think?
Well, I think personally, what I think it was, they were looking at other areas and how everything was thrown on the tube, on the radio, and some of the papers. They wanted to keep all the drama down and out, and just put a lid on it. We're going to do this without all the drama
that front row was having.
Yeah, or other places also. Fellow, we don't want to do that here. We think that if we can just keep it down, have these kids going to school, you ain't gonna have a bunch of pictures taken and
violence,
all that stuff. Keep it all down, get it low key. And I think that's what it was.
They ain't want no trouble.
Trouble. But it was a transition, because I remember just like yesterday. Let's see, Lawrence. I can't remember Lawrence's last name. I remember getting off the school bus and just walking into school, and it was just like the first day was just like all the other days. It was nobody hardly speak to you, whatever. But it was just walk on in and try to find my way to my locker and my classes, and it was nobody saying anything. Every once in a while somebody said good morning, hi.
Right.
But everything was just, and that transition was just smooth, and that's what Mr. Dillon wanted.
He didn't want any trouble. He didn't want that nervousness.
And he thought that maybe the media might have
try to stir it up.
Inadvertently maybe, but some people. So I just sometimes when I look on the television, well, I try not to watch too much news, but some of it can really get you riled up, and so to keep it down, not to put it out there for people, but maybe just keep it at a lower roar.
Because there are enough people around to stir a pot, and he was just doing he was just keeping it down. He did a good job. He was protecting his students,
right.
And he took it a step further. And a lot of people don't know about this, but he said it for the first time when we had that celebration
at the museum.
Acknowledgement at the museum. People don't know he came up to Sunset Hill School. He didn't have to do that. And he talked to those teachers and wanted to know how he could make the transition smoother for us. He didn't have to do that. And that's how the visits started preschool, by making sure that we kids got a chance to go over to the school before the school started
Mm-hmm.
to see what a locker is. We know what a locker looks like.
Yeah, right. Locker. What's a
What
locker?
is the cafeteria? What are you talking about?
Gym? Oh, wow.
A gym? You really get in line with a tray for lunch?
Mm-hmm.
You have to bring a bag?
You have to bring a brown bag. You know.
Or
He
lunch
made
box.
sure that's right. He made sure that happened.
Right.
And for him to have the foresight during that time and that day, that was a heck of a thing to do. To have the forethought to do that for kids who knew nothing about a locker in a cafeteria or how to matriculate to classes.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had 2 floors.
Wow.
Are you kidding? We had a one.
We had 2
we had
buildings.
one.
put
Well, we
together.
had a one-room school first,
Yeah, then.
with the fountain on the outside, water fountain on the outside that froze in the winter.
Yeah, but they moved it inside.
But they moved it inside. Then we had an add-on,
Yep.
and it was a bathroom in there.
Yeah,
on the
one for
inside.
both. One for girls and one for
One for girls and one for boys. Okay, so we were like in heaven then, right?
No Johnnies.
So, that's right. That's right. So to go to a school with 2 floors.
Oh,
wow.
and showers.
And showers in the locker room. So he came to the school and worked out a plan with the teachers to make sure that we were afforded that.
Right.
So to me, that's protecting your kids, taking care of your kids. So that, not just avoid the trouble, but helping with a smoother transition.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's interesting. You know, the same year you started at Strasburg, I talked to a student that started at Stonewall the same year. And she gave a completely different story of her first day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she said when they got there, the media was there.
Mm-hmm.
She said they had police there, and there was a lot of excitement and a lot of drama. So that's a very interesting contrast.
Mm-hmm.
You see, I
Just one
my
end of the
divorce-
county.
See, I remember the teacher saying, we don't want, I see, his memory's different from mine.
What? No,
Well,
that's
did
not
were
our
you on
memories.
our bus?
It's not.
Were you
No,
on
no, no, no,
bus?
no, no, I didn't.
That's right. See, he wasn't on my bus.
No, I was on a whole different setup. Remember, I started,
Before I did.
Before you
That's
did.
right.
and you know,
Yeah,
now,
yeah. He was only one of them. Okay, it makes a difference.
Yeah, I'm sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
But also, I think about we were talking about this last week,
Mm-hmm.
about some of the teachers that used to snub us, I mean, not really be very friendly, or some of the we see now, or some of the
Yes.
best, some of our best friends.
Friends. Yes.
And it's awesome.
My first client that
Uh,
called me at my house on a Saturday.
And where you want to say where you were?
Oh, I'm a financial advisor with Edward Jones. My office is right downtown.
All right.
My first $350,000 check. Okay. I'm thinking, now I have been talking to this man. First of all, it's a production thing, especially in the first year. You got to make
Mhm.
money. And so I said, I know he's got money, but I know who he is.
Mhm.
I'm in one of the biggest races. I said, but I'm going to his house, dog fighting. Because everybody in Strasburg and townhouse was a racist, so you know what the heck, right? So I called him and I said, you know, Mr. So and so and so and so and so, this is what I'm doing. I know you know me, because you know we know each other. We don't have to go any further.
Mhm.
But this is what I'm doing. He got me in his house, which shocked me.
Mhm.
Because this kids used to call us the N-words, and we used to call them the C-words. And all that. I was never a fighter. My brother and sister, they'd be fighting going to school and fighting coming home from school. So I talked to him, I know, a good 6 months. And I said, okay. But I'm persistent, I'm quiet. You know, I'm just going to just keep happening, you know. So one day he called me right here at, yes, we were living here at this house. He said, may I come to your office? I said, well, of course I'll open for you, but how much is your check? So He said 350,000. Well, first of all, I was shaking all the way down to the office. And I have to tell you, to this day, I can't tell you why he gave me that check, but he trusted me.
Just because he trusted you.
Yeah, but what I'm saying was that he was one of the worst.
Mm.
And that was one of the non-educated ones.
Okay.
So, and his daughter, because I know because his daughter was in my class, and we had a few nice words. Okay, and I didn't let people run over me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a nasty mouth, and I didn't curse. I didn't do any of those things. But by the time I finished with you, you knew you were cursed out by the time you got home.
Mm-hmm.
Because my grandmother taught me how to do that.
Nasty, nice.
Because she's nice, nasty.
Nice, nasty.
Nice, nasty. Because she taught us not, that you had to stand up. You don't pick a fight and you walk away every time you can. But if nobody there lets you walk away, here's what you say. And she's even very nice. And so, I still remember him handing me that check. It was almost like he didn't know what he was doing. When I took the check and put it in his account. And that was my first real big account. And when that happened to me, I still sometimes think about it. I knew that I was going to be okay in Strasbourg.
Mm-hmm.
As long as I truly respect people. If you don't respect me, that's your issue, but I'm going to respect you. If you don't respect me, then, we don't have any business together. So, and that was a turning point for me. It was a good turning point for me, for my business as an adult, that I knew that I can handle Strasbourg. I'm all right in Strasbourg. I'll do all right. And so, but he was not a very nice person. Truly, he was not. And so anyway, that's one of my adult stories, coming from a child in school with his daughter who taught his kids how to do the N-word. And I know that he did.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but that's how people can change. That's how people can change. If he can change, anybody can change.
Now, I'm also curious a little bit, because you knew one of them, I guess, a little bit better, that the teachers at the black schools.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, I can't figure out what happened to them after the schools.
That's a good question.
We are still looking.
You're still looking?
I know one, Miss Adora H. Payne,
Oh, yes.
went back to Ransom, West Virginia.
That's
okay.
right.
And
She had two daughters.
Yes. But that's where she lived until she passed.
Passed away.
Which had been too awful many years ago, 5, 6 years
That's
ago.
right. She passed. Now, we don't know what has happened to her daughters.
No, not her daughters was so much, because they weren't. I'm going to say that because they weren't our teachers.
That's true.
But I'm saying George Heller, who was.
Yes. I had a crush on George Heller.
George Heller, and then you had Miss Truesdale, Miss Brimage.
Miss Brimage.
We've been trying to see if we can find them, and we've had people try to see if we can locate them.
And
And the records, they've, from what we understand, they don't keep, like in the county, whatever, they don't keep records for a certain amount of time.
Right.
And someone brought us some stuff that
Judy
we throwed out.
Judy Jackson.
We throwed out in the trash.
John
Someplace in the
Mansfield.
trash.
And trash.
And he picked it up and then went, oh my God.
It was Mr. Heller's attendance book. It had my name, all my sisters and brothers' names in it, where he was from, his address in Roanoke,
Yeah.
and everything. But we have not been able to find him. He went to Virginia State College where I went, of course, years before.
Mm-hmm.
And I found him in the college book and everything, but he's probably
Dropped off
passed
the
on.
map, you know, just. But those three, we last
Right.
couple of years been trying to see if we can hook up with Richmond and all those things, trying to
Right.
see if we can locate them. But
And one minister, Reverend Rear, was it Rear? He
Yeah.
was your relative, wasn't he?
yeah, but that was
That was
way-
before our time. That
Yeah,
was
that
Sunset
was-
Hill School
way,
before our time.
Yeah, it was way back.
But we have a list of teachers.
Okay.
We have a list of teachers that we've accumulated through the older citizens
Mm-hmm.
that went there to the younger citizens that went there. And as much information as we've been able to gather, but we're still working on that.
That's at the museum, isn't it?
I know I have it upstairs. You and I have it upstairs.
Because I was curious, they're working for the county as teachers, and then the school's integrated. And I'm sure that, and this is the case almost everywhere, that they're no longer teachers here in the county, because
Yeah.
you can't, even at the time you couldn't have a black teacher teaching white
Right.
kids.
Right.
No. So what happened to them?
That's the good question, and we've wondered too.
Right.
But think back when we made a transition from Sunset Hill to Strasburg High School. All our focus was on the now,
Right.
and never even thought about.
What happened to the teachers?
Right.
Right.
But we were kids.
Right.
But as adults, see, we're trying to hook up and find about where they went,
Right.
what happened to them, and such. But the only one we know of is
Miss
Miss
Payne.
Payne.
But it was their focus too. They were so focused on us doing well at the white school. That was their focus. When we get there, when you get there, that was the push.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to do well. I want you to show those folks. That was the push. And then they just left.
Because the one, and I forget her name now, it was the teacher at Creekside.
Miss McLean.
Yeah, Miss
Oh,
McLean.
that's Miss Payne's sister.
Yeah, the church there in Woodstock, Mount Zion, they know where she's buried. She went back to West Virginia.
Okay, so she
Okay,
must
well,
be
that
around
makes
too.
sense. Uh-huh.
Yeah, but I don't know anything about the ones that were from were the teachers in Strasburg.
Yeah, we were hoping, but like I said, people just trash so much stuff.
Right.
Mhm.
That's so sad. I mean, so much history is just trashed.
And at the museum, there's a copy of George Heller's. We made a copy of George Heller's book that was
Okay.
found. It's there.
Right.
It looks like the original. We did a real good job. It's not the original. I never thought about it like that. That's an excellent question. You know, it was almost like now I feel guilty we didn't think about the teachers, but we were only kids.
Right.
And then there was that push, you know, you get out of school, get out of school. What are you going to do out of school? Some of y'all going to go to military, some of you going to go to college, some of you going to do here, there. You know, it's just, that was a chaotic time in a sense.
It was. It was a traumatic time. Traumatic time.
But now I look at now, and I look back at then didn't look too bad compared to some of the stuff that goes on now, in a sense.
I
That's my
I
thing.
still think that even with all that stuff, I think we had it easier as far as school because we were focused. We were a lot more focused, and then at the same time, there were things motivating you. There was the civil rights. There were leaders. There were people there to guide you in your community. The community mobilized, whether it was a local
Mhm.
mobilization or more of a national event, but there was the mobilization, there was the push. There's not that anymore, and we knew that education or something beyond the high school you were going to need. Vocational school, college, military is a big deal. But I don't know. I think our focus was more simple. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Than what the kids are experiencing today. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, but I think so.
And then, I guess looking after integration, after the school integrated, I guess maybe we can do it like we did at the beginning, where I asked you just to talk a couple minutes about, could you just talk for a minute or so about how things were, kind of focusing on Strasbourg after, as integration progressed, and what, racism continues, but what, I guess, kind of how has that, and you've talked about a little bit, how has that changed, and maybe, what the community was like, and how that changed a little bit, in terms to how people dealt with race and things like that. Were there any bad instances after integration comes at the schools and things? And I hope that makes
I'm not
sense
sure
a little
about
bit.
the question.
Well, only thing I can say is that schools, there again, I think was some of the guys, from what I understand, there was after the school started, after all that, they did have some fights, but
Right.
There were fights.
you got boys, you're gonna, or some girls,
Right.
you're gonna have conflicts, no matter what. But it seemed like it's somewhat of an acceptance of what we've come through by the community, but still, yet you still got, as some of the ladies in church used to say, you still got some of the old heads in the back thinking the old ways, and that's on both sides of race, of the race. We shouldn't even be over there, or we shouldn't even be at that school. And of course, the swimming pool thing.
Right.
Some of the black people won't let their children go to the swimming pool today, now, because of something that happened back then. We weren't allowed to go then. But sometimes you got to move on a little bit, because hate begets hate. I mean, my thinking is, I got a granddaughter who goes to the pool. We have a granddaughter that goes to the pool. I wasn't allowed. I was swimming in the river, but I had a ball. All my friends were there because a lot of the poor white families couldn't afford, what was it, $100 a year or a summer or something. They couldn't afford that. So we were swimming at the river together and having a ball. But if that answers part of your question,
I think it does. That was the kind of what I was looking for. What the.
But
the
you still
overall,
got hate
right
in there, and you still got. You probably will for a long time, I guess. I don't know.
That's an excellent question, because I was asked that question. I had an opportunity to answer that question by someone white just the other day. And here's how I answered the question. Well, the question was posed a little bit differently. Is there still racism? The person had had a conversation with someone black in the community and felt that because something wasn't done because of racism. Do you still think that exists in Strasbourg? Well, of course. Well, really? In order for you to mention it to me, because I'm black, then you know it must be something right about what they're saying. You're a very intelligent person, and I know that, and I like you. I don't know you that well, but in order for you to ask me that question, there must be. person wasn't quite sure how to deal with it.
Right.
And I said this. I said, a couple things you do not want to do. Do not appoint a person in Strasbourg who's black to deal with black stuff. Do not do that. Because there you are segregating them.
Mm-hmm.
But you know enough in here, and I know you do because you asked me about it. Look at it as an opportunity to say to the person, well, you think it's racist. Don't be afraid to say the word race or racism. You need to understand that anybody past 50 or 60 or so in this town have had to deal with that. And it's part of who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because it's part of who they are, it's going to affect how they respond to certain things. And so, if you really want to do a great job, don't deny what they're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
They're opening up an invitation for you to talk about it. And so, just the dialogue in and of itself is a step forward. You must take the step forward.
Right.
You know, it's okay to talk about race. Let's not pretend that it's insignificant and it does not exist. And when you take that step, you're taking a step forward every time, even if you still end up disagreeing about the issue that you're talking about.
Right.
But to deny is the worst mistake you could ever make. There's racism, just like Willy says, on the part of many white folk here. Racism on the part of many black folk here. Not that there's a whole bunch of black folk, but there is. There is. So, yes, there is. And we can only take a step forward when we are in dialogue together. And if I can be of any help, I will be glad to be of any help to anyone who wants to have a conversation. But I don't represent black people.
Right.
And that's where a lot of white folks make a mistake. And so that was an excellent question you asked. And that's my answer to that.
Right.
And you're sticking to it.
That's right.
And then this one very last one, and I'm glad you brought this up because the Strasbourg pool. I know the story of the Woodstock pool integrating. Do you all know anything in relation to the Strasbourg pool and segregation and integration?
Only thing I know is it was you had to pay a fee
Mm-hmm.
and
To keep us out.
well
And riffraff too.
Yeah.
As they call it, riffraff. I'm,
Right.
you know what I mean. I'm
Right.
not calling riffraff myself, but that's the way it was seen.
Well, that's the way it was set up too. See?
Mm-hmm.
And every time I think about it, I think about a story that Glenn Proctor told.
Mm.
It was this young boy named Carter Osbury.
All right.
He used to play with Glenn's children. Okay. One day, Glenn was going to take his boys to the pool. And Carter asked him, said, okay, Mr. Proctor, you gonna go to the pool? He said, oh, no. He said, we just, time for you to go home, and we're going to have to take my boys out for a while, more or less. So, because Glenn said he just didn't want to break his heart
Right.
to tell him that he was taking his boys to the pool and he wasn't allowed to go.
Right.
Okay. So, that being said, time went on. But down here, right down the road here on Battlefield, as you go out, it's, what's the name of that? Gypsy Falls.
Okay.
Okay. Carter with some other boys were down there swimming. Well, he drowned there. And that haunted Mr. Proctor for so long. He he thought about that. Here he is, one of the leaders in his community, wanting to do the right thing with the community, to get along and be a part of this.
Mm-hmm.
And here this young man who his sons played with, and he really thought a lot of, drowned because there was no other place really with a lifeguard or something like
Right.
that for him to go to. So I think he would draw his children from it then. But that being said, I think it got to the point whereas people were kind of like not supporting it. It was getting in
Right.
disrepair, so they ended up having to open up everything and kind of
And
like,
that's
hey,
what
you know,
happened.
we got to get this thing fixed or we're going to shut it down.
Mhm.
We see it started off as really, boy, let's go, and then all of a sudden it fell into disrepair. So,
And then they start letting the riffraff
Anyone-
and the
no.
blacks in.
no, anyone who wanted to
Right.
go there, they were
Right.
allowed in. But
Daddy didn't let us go. And I really wasn't interested because I'm not a swimmer.
Mhm.
So it didn't bother me at all. But for a long time, I was very angry about that because there were a lot of black kids who needed to learn how to swim and wanted
Right.
to swim, and we weren't allowed. And so as a young woman I went to a black college specifically, and my daddy hated it. Well, he didn't. I wouldn't say hated. I would come back looking like Angela Davis and Black Power and all that stuff. And I really did. My dad was so afraid for me. So anyway. And I remember being very angry about that.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, you get over stuff, and I don't like the history. I'm not a swimmer. I still haven't. Well, I didn't take. Who was I?
I was gonna say,
Pool. I was in the
now-
pool.
now check this
I was
out.
in a pool with Bree, honey.
yeah, but check
I was
this
in the
out.
pool with Bree.
Check this out. This woman she
Oh,
can't swim a bit. Da-da-da. But she went to college. She took a class on swimming
Mm-hmm.
and passed.
I was only. I needed 2 credits, and that was besides to
And
graduate.
passed. She was out there
Passed.
stroking.
Diving off the board and everything.
Yes.
But I haven't.
But then all of a sudden it's like, I can't swim.
But I go to the park because I help pay for the park.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not right for me not to go to the park.
Right.
When I want my family to go to the park. And so we had our first reunion of Sunset Hill School, Queen Street. Queen Street came before Sunset Hill
Mhm.
School. Queen Street, then Sunset Hill School in the park. And you know what was so neat? Everybody in town came. And it wasn't just a black thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was a Strasbourg.
And that's where it's
And
supposed to.
that's where dialogue like yours with different people
Mm-hmm.
and dialogue with each other, when it happens, dialogue changes things.
Right.
Because it gets me to know you a little bit better. Oh, you know what? He's okay, guy. Do you know he belongs to so and so? Things grow and
Mhm.
change. But we had the thing at the museum. It was the largest attendance, and this was the thing to celebrate the black schools. It was the largest attendance of any event in the museum. Because it was dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
and people had a chance to cry with us. We weren't the only people crying
Mm-hmm.
about it. Strasbourg cried about it. That's why I'm here in Strasbourg now.
Right.
It's not the most perfect place.
There is no perfect place.
There's no perfect place.
Maybe Myrtle Beach. No.
Perfect weather.
Outer Banks.
Right. But Strasbourg is what it is. It does not pretend to be something that it's not. And it's a town that rallies, but it's time to rally. It rallies.
Mm-hmm.
It has good people in it. And for the most part, we're willing to dialogue, even if it comes to fist fighting sometimes. We dialogue. We do. So, Well, the town council does sometimes, but I don't listen to everybody else.
But the thing that amazes me is, see, where do you live?
Woodstock.
Okay, you said Woodstock, Edinburgh, Mount Jackson, Strawberry. All of them are so different.
Different.
Mm-hmm. Completely different.
So different. And I mean, whew, it's
Yeah.
it's amazing. I mean, because we're even Morristown, Tom's Brook.
Mm-hmm.
We're all right here in the same sock, but we don't fit the same shoes, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But we're all so different,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what makes it unique in my thinking.
So
All right.
it's been quite a journey, and we're all right with it.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things I didn't like about the swimming pool thing, after I went into the Navy and we did all this swimming stuff, there was chlorine.
Yeah.
That's now, of course, we thought the river was the greatest thing since sliced bread. Now we find out it's so polluted, it's awful too. But Marquetta and I'm blessed to live through all what we've gone through, and we look back and just think about some of the things that we've seen, some of the players that have been in this drama that we live, and it's been very unique. I don't know if only thing I would change is I'd take a typing class in high school.